If you care about the environment, the news this year has not been fun in literally any way. Frequently, you wake up, you get random headlines like this. Trump EPA has removed all mention of human-caused climate crisis from public web pages. They just don't acknowledge it in the EPA literally at all. As anti-science as anything RFK Jr. is doing over at HHS. Or this, that Trump's anti-climate agenda could result in 1.3 million more deaths globally. That's horrifying. And that's just on the climate generally, by the way. When it comes to pollution or renewable energy, electric cars, basically anything you can think of, it has been really rough. And I'm not gonna gaslight you about this topic. Federally, it's not gonna get any better for at least a couple of years. And even then, hope we get a good Democrat in 2028. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that we are wholly screwed when it comes to the environment. And it certainly doesn't mean that there isn't good work being done right now by a lot of individuals and organizations. And it doesn't mean that you can't potentially get involved at the local or state level and make a real and meaningful difference when it comes to the environment. And so this is something I've been very excited to talk about. Last week, I had the chance to go up to the far northern region of California with the Redwood Forest Foundation, and they invited me and a number of other individuals representing organizations, activist groups, tech, and all that to see firsthand how they are restoring and attempting to sustainably manage a 50,000 acre redwood forest. It was absolutely massive, stretching for mountains and mountains. Well, it did have mountains and mountains, but miles and miles along the coast. And what I loved about it was this wasn't abstract. This was on the ground work being done by real individuals who have a passion and love for the environment and want to see this very unique aspect of it that we have here in California managed in a better way than it has historically been. This entire region was logged, it was mistreated, invasive and parasitic species, both animals and plants were allowed to come in. It was exploited, that's all it was, but it doesn't have to stay that way. And so they're trying to do it in a very different way. We're gonna put up some images that I and others took on the trip, just so you can see sort of what it looked like, just for scale. I mean, these trees are absolutely massive. This is in an old growth area. A lot of their territory is not old growth because it was logged almost out of existence. These are younger trees, but maybe someday they can be this big behemoths. And some of them are, we'll get to those pictures too. But we spent a day touring the forest and getting briefings from a lot of different people on their team. They have a team of, I think, a little bit less than 25 individuals. They have biologists, they have an awesome forest manager who's actually a fan of the show, which that was exciting. They have technicians. We talked to their CEO about all of their plans and the different partnerships they're hoping to do. And it was people representing a lot of different roles. But they come together, and managing this sort of territory, especially one as big as this, as important as this, it's inherently multidisciplinary. You have to have people who understand the business side, people who understand, the plants, people who have a history dealing with the particular, wildlife that lives in that region, and also people trying to be very creative with using technology to manage this massive territory with a staff of just a couple of dozen people, and we'll get to that. But because redwoods don't grow in, basically anywhere else in the world, and you might not know why this would be important. Isn't it just another forest? And I guess, on some level, every forest is significant. But these redwoods, they have an absolutely massive outsized potential carbon storage advantage. They can take a lot of carbon out of the environment, especially when it's 50,000 acres of it. The region has, or at least should have, incredible biodiversity that they're trying to get us back to. And in terms of resilience, both climate, wildfire resilience here in California, they're very important. They're very resistant to fires. They can burn but not actually die. And so you have to protect them, you have to restore them. And when you do that, you actually helped to protect and restore the climate from multiple different angles at the same time. And so I got to see the work that a lot of different people were doing. There are people who are, taking tours through, they're patrolling the territory because it takes, one individual, it takes multiple days just to, even at a relatively fast speed, ride around all this territory. You have people who are deploying remote sensors to track the movement of species to try to see how certain species like the snowy owl are hopefully coming back over time. And they in particular, they faced a lot of predation from the barred owls that have come in. They're not supposed to be in this region, but through the westward expansion of the United States, they were brought into this region. Now they are hunting down and killing these other owls. They're trying to figure out a way to protect them. they're going around and they're trying to renew some of the disconnected minor water, like the streams and small rivers, so that eventually we can get back to the point where salmon can do their historic traditional route all the way from the ocean, all the way up through this. All of this is possible, and they've been making great strides in the years that they have been managing this territory. And one thing I wanted to mention has to do with AI. So obviously, I have been very critical of AI in a lot of different fields, because it often feels like it's pushing out human creativity, it's pushing out human jobs. But I was able to talk to a couple of people who found a few ways to use it in this environment to, I think, do work that humans just couldn't do. So effectively, they want to place these sensors over this massive territory. You just can't cover it with manpower. You would need hundreds, maybe thousands of people on staff, which they can't have. And you want to have it listening. For instance, if it hears one type of bird versus another, that sort of thing. But you can't have people listen to that. It would just be thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of forest sounds. But they have AI algorithms that can do that. And so this is one implementation of AI that even I, at least now, am comfortable with, because I don't think it's replacing human creativity. I think it's an example of human creativity, and I don't think it's losing anyone any jobs. And so it's great to see this technology that I generally am pretty hesitant to see move into new areas doing something good, particularly for the environment, especially considering all of the negative environmental ramifications of AI, the data centers, and all that. And so it was just great to see all of this different work being done by just a staff of like literally 24 people. And so that was awesome. And I left the trip a little bit carsick, but also filled with like a renewed hope. Not necessarily about what the United States government can do in terms of the environment, because they're doing the stuff they're doing, but what regular people and organizations can do if they care enough, and especially at a local level. And so I want to thank the Redwood Forest Foundation for bringing me out there. I also want to do a shout out to the Inn at Newport Ranch. That's where we stayed. It's in Fort Bragg, California. It's not too far away from the Redwood Forest, and it was a beautiful place to stay. So I really appreciate that too. And it was also, by the way, great to get an opportunity to meet up with all of these other people representing great climate-focused organizations. So that includes Climate Congress, which backs local candidates to hopefully get to them before big money has turned them against, climate advocacy for renewable energy, all of that. And they've had a lot of success in supporting very local level candidates. Rewild was there. That's the Leonardo DiCaprio affiliated environmental organization. They had a couple of representatives, so that was awesome too. And just being able to build connections with these people who all care about the environment and in their own way are trying to do something positive is great. And it's a reminder that, you may not have like a redwood forest in your backyard. You almost certainly don't. But I bet you have organizations like this, Maybe they're trying to fix a local forest, Maybe they're trying to protect one species. Maybe they're trying to clean up a river or a lake or something. Maybe they're trying to reclaim, vacant and dormant urban spaces and set up, urban, gardens and those sorts of things. These sorts of organizations continue to work and arguably need your help even more than they did before Donald Trump became president once again. So anyway, it was a great experience and I want to thank them. And Sharon, unfortunately, I did get to take you, but if you get a chance,
I wish.
Go see the Redwoods. I don't know if you have before.
No, I haven't. I would love to. And just listening to you talk about it, I could tell how excited. I mean, this is your lane. You're a believer. I am too. But I mean, you take it to another level, perhaps. But as I was listening to you and the people who actually care about this stuff, I started thinking like, wouldn't it be great? And I'm not saying that they don't have school kids who go and look at these beautiful trees and learn about this, but wouldn't it be great if it was like mandatory that kids, teenagers, whoever went on these retreats, and not just once, but like you maybe would feel ownership, you'll adopt your tree or whatever it is, and make the relationship between the life that we live and enjoy to what these beautiful trees provide for all of us. We've got to fix a lot of stuff we screwed up. And so just to hear you talk about connecting with nature in that way, that's what it reminded me of. I'd love to go see that with my daughter and maybe feel that personal responsibility about, how am I conducting my life on a day-to-day basis, and how does that affect the environment. Because I live in Atlanta, where we're supposed to be this city of trees and everybody cares about trees, and there's this ordinance and you have to do recompense and all this stuff if you cut down a tree, and you're not really allowed to until a developer comes in and starts lobbying people, and then suddenly, well, it just changes. I looked and I said, my neighbors are all upset because the tree ordinance suddenly there's these carve outs, and that's not really helpful. So I love that you got to go on this. I'm kind of jealous, but I can always take a trip with my daughter.
I think that would be great. And I think some schools do have sort of like nature trips and stuff. I had something like that in elementary school, but like, especially now when it's all our time on our phone and the algorithm and all that. I barely touched my phone in the trip there, partially because of car sickness. But it's a great experience, and I think every kid should get that opportunity. Okay,
Was the air
with that
cleaner?
said, yeah, the air was actually great. That was one of the things that helped me bounce back from the nausea the next day, was just being in nature and smelling the air. And it was a little bit cold, which was nice. I really liked it.